Good afternoon, Year 11. Today we are going to look at how we might revise for AQA GCSE English Language Paper 2 Question 4. So this is your masterclass. So question 4 is the question with the highest marks on Paper 2. It allows you to build up to it and it's worth 16 marks out of the 80 available on the paper. It is a question that needs a bit of practice and development, but it will be really valuable to you for your final grade. So let's have a look at the question first. So we've got an example here for you from June 2017, I think this was. So I'll read the question to you and then we'll talk about what's going on there. So for this question, you need to refer to the whole of source A together with the whole of source B. Compare how the writers convey their different perspectives and feelings about their children growing up. In your answer, you could compare their different perspectives and feelings, compare the methods the writers use to convey their different perspectives and feelings, and support your response with references to both texts. So things to notice here are that some things that will always stay the same on this paper and some things will change. So the first thing that stays the same is the guidance about what to explore. For this question, you need to refer to the whole of source A together with the whole of source B. That will never change. That will always be the same. So that's just a reminder of what the focus of the question is, your ability to write about both extracts and to compare key aspects of it. As you may remember, the focus of paper 1 is exploring how writers create text, and the focus on paper 2 is how writers express viewpoints and perspectives. As we move on to the second part of the question, it tells us to compare how the writers convey Now that can be different. So in this question, it's perspectives and feelings, but it could also be attitudes, but you're looking at how the writers convey something that is personal to them. So you may be asked about perspectives or attitudes, and it's very much about how the author sees things and how they feel about these things. You're being asked to look at their point of view and the way they share what they think about the topic that binds the two extracts together. So on the screen, you can just see a couple of reminders, so things that you need to take away with you today. You're going to be expected to write about both extracts and you're going to be expected to compare them. The second part of the question will tell you what to compare: attitudes, feelings, ideas, and very much the focus of paper 1 is exploring about how writers create the text, but the focus on this paper is how the writers express their viewpoints and their perspectives, very much their opinions. So now let's look at the mark scheme and pick out what you're actually being assessed on. So like question 4 on paper 2, you're being assessed on 4 things here. That often means there'll be 1 or 2 things that you'll forget as you'll be concentrating so hard in doing the others. We're going to discuss levels here, not grades. The 16 marks are very much split into 4 levels. I can't tell you what grade you're working at because the grades are for the whole paper, and you'll mark out of 160 across the 2 papers, not on how you do on a particular question. So I can't exactly say this is what a grade 9 looks like, or this is what a grade 9 answer is, because it doesn't really exist. But I can say that this is a 13 mark answer, and I can say very roughly, as a massive generalisation, that the grades might be split like you see on the slide. So if you're aiming for a grade 3, you're looking at 1 to 4 marks. If you're looking for a grade 4 to 5, 5 to 8 marks. If you're looking for a level 3, 9 to 12 marks. If you're looking for a grade 5, 9 to 12 marks, and that will fall somewhere between the 5 and the grade 7. And a level 4, 13 to 6 marks, 16 marks is where the grade 7 to 9 will fall. So you can adjust yourself accordingly, you know what you're aiming for. So if you're aiming very much to get a grade 7, you should be aiming to get to the top of level 3 or into level 4 on all aspects of the paper. Were you to do that across the whole paper, then you'd be hitting grade 7 kind of territory, you'd almost be there. So let's have a look at those 4 strands that you can see on the screen a little bit more carefully. So the first one is about comparing the ideas and perspectives, makes references, cross-references of ideas and perspectives. The second one is about the writer's methods. The third is about references or quotations. The fourth is about identifying the ideas So that's the attitudes, perspectives, the opinions of the author. So for each of those 4 strands, there is increase in difficulty or complexity as you'd expect. It's not that level 1 students do different things than level 4 students, they just do things differently. So let's take each strand in turn, starting with the main one, comparison. So level 1 responses will be making simple cross-references, very simple comparisons. That makes you making simple links between the 2 texts. At level 2, the responses will attempt to compare. Level 3, responses will have a clear and relevant comparison. So you'll have picked something out very tangible and compared those across. And level 4 responses are very perceptive and detailed. You're really saying clever things and looking really closely at the evidence from the text. That works with the next strand about references. Level 1 responses will have a simple reference or detail. At level 2, responses will have some appropriate detail. Level 3 responses will have relevant detail. And level 4 responses will have a range of judicious supporting detail, so quite a lot of quotations. You can see this again will continue in the strand about writers' methods. Level 1 responses will only make a simple Level 1 responses will make simple identification of methods. So you will have to, even at the bottom level, pick out some methods. At level 2, responses have some comment on the methods. Level 3 responses will have a clear explanation of the methods. So you will very much be saying the writer uses this technique and this technique makes me think the writer believes this, or the writer thinks that, or the writer feels this. Level 4 responses will analyse very much how the writer has deliberately used those methods, but the key to this is you must mention methods. Finally, in the final strand about ideas and perspectives, level 1 responses will only make a simple understanding of perspective. We'll pick out a simple viewpoint made by the writer. Level 2 will identify some ideas and perspectives. Level 3 responses will have a clear understanding of the ideas. We'll pick out the main viewpoints of the writers throughout the text. And a level 4 response will show a really detailed understanding of the ideas and perspective of both writers. So how are you going to structure your response? So method, by the way, simply means anything that the writer is doing. It doesn't mean, drag out listing. It's just a really lovely vague term. So you don't need to go feature spotting. That will hamper your response. So when it says here that you're picking out the ideas and perspectives, you're looking very closely at the detail, you're picking out the methods the writer's using and you're making a comparison. It doesn't have to be a simile, a metaphor every time. It could be that it's first person, it could be imagery, it could be tone, it could be mood. Don't go device spotting. That's not going to help you whatsoever. So where do you start when you come to writing this response? You're going to start by identifying your quotes from both texts. Do a broad brush strokes by underlining, by going through both texts and underlining or highlighting literally anything that you think shows a viewpoint or perspective, attitude or feeling, or suggest one. Don't be stingy. Use a different colour highlighter or a ruler and a pen and underline everything that's useful, even if you end up with 75% of the text underlined. When you've done this for both texts, you can then narrow down. For a 16-mark question, you're looking to write about for 16 to 20 minutes, which gives you time to write about 3 good paragraphs. That means you're looking for 3 pairs of linked quotations across the 2 texts. So I look at my 2 texts and then narrow down on the things that match. And then I might even narrow down one more time if I have too much to go off. Okay, so on the screen there, you will see what you should be doing. You want to identify a quote or viewpoint in source 1. You're going to use the quote to support your point. You're going to mention the method and say what the quote means. You're going to explain the method and its effect. You're then going to make a connection between that quote and source 2. You're then going to use a quote to support your point for that. You're going to mention the method and say what the quote means, and you're going to explain the method and the effect. There's always going to be a structure. You're going to do that at least 2 to 3 times. So what you can see here is what I would have done in the exam. I have picked out a massive amount of quotes that relate to the question that we've been looking at. All of these quotes show the ideas and perspectives and feelings about these parents and growing up. So one of the ideas that's demonstrated in source A, it's the longest and shortest year of my life. That shows that the writer's feeling about their child growing up, okay? So as I read, I'm outlining all the things that could be possibly an attitude or viewpoint, and remember, I'm underlining everything. And as I read that, I'm going to be getting an understanding of the big ideas, the main points. So for instance, in source A, he feels that it's okay that his son is changing, whereas in source B, he seems filled with this sense of profound sadness and loss. So as I'm going through those texts, I'm really going to start narrowing in on how these writers feel about their children. And remember, I've already answered question 1, 2 and 3, so I should have a really good understanding of the text by the time I get there. So in source B, she mentions fretting and scolding and things she found annoying, whereas in source A, he just seems amazed by his child, if a little bewildered. In source B, however, he finds the grown-up boy in front of us bewildering. So I'm aiming for 3 differences to my plan though, so I need to look closer. Both have a sense of regret, though this isn't unlike my first paragraph, but source A seems to be okay with the future. I think I can develop that idea into 2 paragraphs. Also though, when I look back at my quotes, source A says that he feels like his son has always been a part of the family, whereas source B seems to see her son as a stranger. But what you can see there is I'm very much picking out the differences and the similarities between this text. I'm very much picking up the differences of these parents and their approaches and their understanding of how their children have grown up. So I've got all my quotes there, and then I want to make connections between those texts. How is it different? Yeah? How do they have different viewpoints in growing up? Remember, these sources are in our Google Classroom, so you can look those up. They are there for you, but you know, that is the structure of what my answer will begin to look like. So what you want to do, once you've got all your quotes that I picked up, you need to narrow it down. You need to look about the feelings about the child growing up. So this is what I picked out. I've got all my quotes there on that grid that I've just shown you, and I have narrowed it down to just the core feelings about this child growing up. So I picked out they're part of their family, and those are my quotes there. It felt as if my son has always been part of this family, versus he calls me mother, but I'm rather unwilling to own him, as if he's a stranger of her. He feels his son is part of the family, even though he jokes about it, whereas she feels he's a stranger. So I picked out, they're both part of the family, but the difference is, on one hand, he's very close, and it's a joke, but he feels really close to his family, whereas on the other hand, she feels like her child is a stranger to him. All right. On the second hand, I've got, very much it's okay versus regret. So he's leaving milestone after milestone in his wake, and tiny parts of me along with him, and then he'll never be again the baby who. But it's okay versus, but my eyes, fears are aching. So my eyes and ears are aching. My little boy is lost, and my big boy will soon be. So I've got very much it's okay that they're growing up versus this regret they're growing up. So what I've got here is what one author feels and what the other author feels, with the quotes that I will use to back that up. You will notice, and you should notice, that something is missing. I have forgotten to include something. Can you spot what I have forgotten? Hopefully you will. Yep, I forgot what the techniques are. So both sources use first-person narrative viewpoint to present their point of view. One uses metaphor and contrast. There's some conditionals. Source A isn't conditional, there's some future tense. So I'm picking out my method. So once you've kind of picked out what's the main feeling and your supporting quotes, what techniques can you pick out as well? Okay. So what I would like you to do now, and it's completely up to you, I have given you the structure of your response. I've even given you a little plan there that you can use. So as part of your revision, Do you want to practice? Do you want to practice and submit that for marking? I'd suggest that it's a great idea. Thanks very much, and thank you very much for joining our masterclass today.